Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I have my client Colleen with me. You guys seem to really like my last hair tutorial video that I did. So in today's video, she actually has a balayage that she's been growing out for like 7 or 8 months now. So we're actually gonna go deeper for the fall time. So we're gonna throw in not particularly low lights. I'm gonna kind of balayage them in because I don't want to deepen up her root color because the way that it's growing out, it's like seamlessly right now. And what I don't want to do is have her have more maintenance. So I'm gonna throw in some deeper pieces, and then she wants the blonde pieces to kind of pop out a little bit more. So what I'm going to do with these blonde ones is just kind of paint on probably 10 or 20 volume. I don't want to do anything too much because I don't want to add, any more damage or anything like that. We're trying to keep it as healthy as possible while also giving her low maintenance. So if you guys are interested on seeing what I do to her hair, then let's just go ahead and get started. Alright, so I wanted to take you guys outside so you could kind of see a little bit better of what we're working with here. So like I said, she has her natural root that she's been growing out for like seven or 8 months. And then right here is obviously the balayage. So it's a really gorgeous color that we're working with down here, but we kind of want to make it pop a little bit more and then add some dimension. So alright, so for the darker color that I'm putting in her hair, or I guess you could say the Lowlight, I'm using 5N and 6N from Kenra with 10 volume. And the reason that I am using permanent color in this situation is because I know my specific client, she only comes in every 6 to 8 months, so I know that she's not going to want to go lighter in 2 months. So if a client of mine was wanting to go lighter and then darker and lighter and darker, I would obviously use a demi-permanent. And then a lot of the time when you're using a darker color on top of a blonde, you don't want it to turn muddy and you want to fill the hair first. But because this is so, it's not like an all over dark color, you're doing more like highlights and lowlights, you can't obviously fill the hair just on those specific strands. So that's why I'm using a neutral, because if I used an ash, it would turn out a little bit more muddy and ashy and green. So I want it to turn out very rich and just beautiful. So that's why I'm using a neutral in this color. And then also the reason I'm using permanent, like I said, I know that her hair, she's not going to want to change it to go lighter. So with this situation, I know that she's going to keep it for a long time. So I not only want the hair to look good the day of, but I also want it to look good 4 months from now, 5 months from now, 6 months from now. So I want the color to fade to her natural color. I forgot to record this part, but for the lightener, I am using the Schwarzkopf Igora Vario Blonde Lightener with 20 volume. Now for the sectioning of this technique, it's going to be just like a balayage section that I usually do. So I'm going to do a headband, and from the ears forward are 2 separate sections. So on one side of her part is one, and then the other side of her part is the other. And then I just have that big back side. So I'm starting in the back because the hairline in the front is usually the most delicate part of the hair, as we all know. So I'm starting at the bottom of the neck, and I'm taking a horizontal slice, and I am going to saturate this piece from the middle to the end. So everything that is blonde and then everything in the middle is going to be fully saturated with the low light shades of the 5 and 6N mixed equal parts. And then as you guys can see up near the root, I'm feathering it up. I'm not actually placing it there and fully saturating it and doing a full-on low light. I'm just going to kind of feather it in there so that way you guys will see at the end result. This is going to blend her roots to the ends seamlessly, so that way you're not having any demarcation. So you're probably sitting here wondering, well, Frida, why aren't you doing a full just high and low to give her that dimension? What I don't want to happen is have anything alter her natural root color, because she usually can go 6 to 8 months with a beautiful grow out, and I want to keep having that happen. I want her to go as long as possible without having to come back in and without having a horrible grow out. So I feel like with highlights and lowlights, you have that strict kind of line when you're doing a low light, and you can't feather it up as easily as you can with a saran wrap, because with saran wrap, you're obviously able to customize it as much as you possibly want to. And with the brighter pieces, I'm not trying to get her like super white blonde. Like, I don't need to over process her blonde already. So I am just kind of brightening up the pieces that we already have and dragging them up a little bit further. But like I said, I'm not trying to get to that super bright white blonde. So that's why I feel like the saran wrap is better in this situation rather than having to go in with a bunch of different foils. So as you guys see me repeating those steps, I wanted to show you this specific one and tell you guys what I'm doing. So in this specific piece, you'll see that I'm doing a weave sectioning, but it's not going to be a lighter weave. It's going to be a low light type of weave. So while I'm making my way up the head, I'm going to take slices of dark, I'm going to take weaves of light, and then I'm going to take weaves of dark as well. So all the pieces that you can see I'm throwing to my right side is just things that are left over, and those will just be toned in the end. So what I'm going to do is do this weave, but do it with the low light. So I wanted to show you 3 different techniques of what I'm using throughout the head, so that way it's more alternating pieces rather than having such a uniform way. Like, I need a highlight here, a low light here, highlight here, low light here. It's more kind of alternating, that way it's more natural result rather than like, oh, one section she has a highlight, one section she has a low light. It's more altered, that way when you pull the hair up, or if she ever puts her hair in like a half up, half down, it's not like, oh, I can see that section was a low light or that section was a highlight clearly. It's more scattered, so that way it's the most natural effect possible. I also wanted to mention a little tip. If you guys are going to try this on your client, and say your client's a level 6 or 7, and she brings in a color that looks like a level 5 or 4, and she's like, I want this one. Well, clearly you wouldn't use this technique and use like a 4 in between all of these instead of the low light color that I'm using, because with mine, it matches her natural color. And that's the whole point of this process, is to match the natural color. So this wouldn't work if you're wanting to go deeper or darker, because it would just look like random splotches of darkness. But with this, it matches her natural so well that you can't tell. It's very seamless. So I just wanted to quickly mention that. But if your client was, say, a natural level 4 and she showed you pictures of like a 6 or a 7, you could do that too, because that would just kind of melt it in as like a dimensional balayage rather than, you know, throwing in such dark pieces. So if your dark client that has really blonde ends wants to go a tad bit darker, but you don't want to bring her back to her natural, you could also throw in some 6, 7s and then brighten up those pieces as well. So this is fully customizable, but that's what I wanted to just kind of explain in case some of you are kind of thinking about trying this and you're like, wait, why didn't this work with, you know, my natural level 7? I threw a 3 in there. So I just wanted to quickly mention that little tip. So I wanted to show you guys what I'm doing up here on the top. You guys will see while I'm explaining this, I'm doing 2 bright blonde balayage pieces at the top, and the reason I'm doing this is when I'm doing hair, I don't look at it as, alright, I need to do highlight, low light, or I need to kind of go in a pattern. I do it more customizable to the head and where those pieces are going to lay when you're looking at them. So I feel like a lot of people get lost in having to do a specific pattern, or maybe something that you taught or that you got taught in school that you have to do and that's like engraved in your head. I look at it more now as, where is the specific piece going to lay? So the front piece is obviously brighter, the back piece is obviously darker. So in this situation, I want those top pieces to lay on the bottom kind of deeper pieces, because to me, that's going to give the perfect dimension up on top. I don't want her to feel like she's lost her blonde completely, because you know how it is to be blonde and then you feel like your colorist kind of took you way too dark. So with this, I'm obviously going a lot blonder near her face, and then in the back and the top, I'm going to make sure that it's a lot blonder than it is on the bottom. So the bottom dimension, you're going to have that deeper with the kind of pops of blonde, and then up at the top it's going to be blonder. But because this is balayaged on there, it's not just a, you know, full-on highlight right at the root. This is going to still lay seamlessly right on top of the darker, deeper pieces to give that perfect dimension and that perfect pop of blonde right in between all the dark. So I wanted to show you guys what I'm doing around the hairline. I know every single client wants that money piece. They want to be brighter up on front. I don't want her to lose too much blonde. So what I'm going to do is take these pieces in a foil, because I definitely want these to be a lot brighter, but also be gentle with these pieces, because as you guys can see, these pieces right here on her are a lot shorter, so she has some breakage up there. So what I'm going to do is kind of feather it in through her ends and then kind of feather it through her root. I'm not going to take this directly at her root and, you know, as close as possible to the root. I want it to kind of fade in there, so when she pulls her hair back or when her hair is growing out, it's not going to be such a harsh line with the foil. Like, this is a very, very baby fine foil, and that's why I'm not worrying about the foil being, you know, all the way up at the top at the root right there. So just folding that over, and then I'm going in with a second baby light right there. And now this baby light as well is going to be pretty close to the root, but not right on it. So I'm going to feather this one in as well. So I wanted to show you with this third baby light, I'm going to still put it in the foil, but I'm going to kind of prepare it to be dropped onto the balayage pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm still going to put it in the foil, but I'm not going to put as much lightener on it, and I'm not going to put it as high up to the root. I'm going to drop it a little bit lower, but still feather it in. So now moving back onto the balayaging technique, so I'm working my way up horizontally again, just on the side of the head, and doing the exact same thing. Going back to what I said about imagining where exactly the hair is going to fall rather than following a specific pattern, I know that she parts her hair in the exact same spot every single day no matter what, so I'm looking at it as kind of where her part is going to fall, where these hairs are going to fall. So with this section, I'm dropping in a Lowlight, that Lowlight slice, and the reason I'm doing that is because right on top of this is the closest to her root and the closest to her part that we're going to get. So I'm dropping in that Lowlight, so right on top, where her part is going to be is where that blonde is going to lay perfectly on there. So you'll see I'm doing a little weave of the blonde, and I'm kind of feathering this one up a little bit higher than the other blondes that we've been doing, because this is going to be right on her part and pretty close up to the front of her head. So we can still give her the overall dimension, but we're not making her lose all her blonde at the same time. So what I'm doing here is dropping in a Lowlight slice, a very thin one, not super thick, and the reason I'm doing that, you're probably wondering, well, Frida, you just said that you want it as blonde as possible on her part. Yes, although I do want it as blonde as possible, I also still want it to blend in perfectly. So like, if you look at the part and you kind of slice it in half and you're like, okay, you think you need a back-to-back highlight because you want the highlight, those two highlights, this is so hard to explain. You want the two highlights to break in half and have that perfect blonde. But you also want that dark piece to kind of split in half and have that darker kind of dimension in the middle of those super blonde pieces as well. Because remember, she still wants to go dark, but she still wants to be blonde. So with this dark slice in the middle, it's going to give you that perfect mixture of dark and light rather than so much blonde just in one section of her head. Now moving on to the other side of her head, and again, I'm going throughout her hairline and doing the exact same thing as we did on the other side. I just wanted to tell you guys that I'm repeating the exact same steps on this little section right here, and then also on the front of her hairline at the very top as well, and then just going back and forth between the slices of balayage as well. now for toners, I'm using 6N and 7N from Redken Shades EQ, and I'm going to section off the front of her hairline, so that way we can use 9P from Redken Shades EQ as well. But the 9P is going to be for the front money pieces, and then the 6 and 7N is going to be for the rest of her hair, so that way she has that different dimension, but then she has the brighter pieces up front. So this is the after and the result that we are left with. I absolutely love the way that this turned out. I think it is just a perfect dimensional balayage for the fall. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this video and if you want me to continue doing more hair tutorials. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!